احتفظنا بها في صدارة قاعة التاريخ مع مقتنيات أخرى.
Quran. Almost 800 years ago, during a bloody religious war between Christians and Muslims, St. Francis of Assisi crossed the battle lines to have a dialogue with a leader and teacher of Islam, and that conversation changed both men. He brought back to Italy prayer forums and a spirituality that mirrors ideas in the Holy Scriptures of Islam and in Muslim prayer. And in the climate, he brought back to Italy prayer forums and a spirituality that mirrors ideas in the Holy Scriptures of Islam and in Muslim prayer. And in the climate of hostility in the 13th century, that move alone was radical. If you like my take, I suggest Christians purchase a copy of the English interpretation of the Quran and study it. You'll find there a respectful treatment of Jesus and his mother Mary, as well as thoughts on peacemaking. And perhaps such an act could change today's climate of misunderstanding and distrust. For AmericanCatholic.org, I'm Franciscan Father Greg Friedman.
St. Francis of Assisi was indeed perhaps centuries ahead of his time in understanding that the gospel call to Christian life meant letting nothing get in the way of relationship, even one's faith tradition. Called to engage with. Nearly 800 years after his death, the Second Vatican Council and the Church, in its decree Nostra Aetate on the Christian relations to non-Christian religions, writes that the Catholic Church rejects nothing that is true and holy in other religions, and spends makes a particular effort to talk about our relationship to our Muslim sisters and brothers. The Church regards with esteem, the document says, also our Muslim sisters and brothers. They adore the one God, living and subsisting in himself, merciful and all-powerful, the creator of heaven and earth, who has spoken to men and women, and they take pains to submit wholeheartedly to even his inscrutable decrees, just as Abraham, with whom the faith of Islam takes pleasure in linking itself, submitted to God. Since in the course of centuries not a few quarrels and hostilities have arisen between Christians and Muslims, this sacred synod, that is, the teaching of the Second Vatican Council at the highest level, urges all to forget the past and to work now sincerely for the mutual understanding and to preserve as well as to promote together for the benefit of all humankind social justice and moral welfare, as well as peace and freedom. Catholic Christians in a particular way are called, as we hear both in the Second Vatican Council's teaching, official teaching of the Church, its highest teaching, as well as in the example of people like St. Francis of Assisi, this move to understand, learn about, and to engage in interreligious dialogue. In order to do that, we must understand other religious traditions, and in recent years I want to share with you a book that I just came to have a look at, a book that was just recently published this month in November of 2015, and that's this. It's the HarperCollins Study Quran. What's very important and interesting about this text is that not only does it provide a new translation in English, and I must say, of course, as many of you already know, that in the Muslim tradition, in Islam, you cannot have an authentic translation in any vernacular language. That our sisters and brothers of the Islamic faith believe that the Holy Quran is the verbatim word of God that was transmitted to the Prophet Muhammad, and it was done so in Arabic. And so while there can be translations, such as this one that has just recently been published, to help in study, especially for those in other religious traditions or those whose primary language is not Arabic, it's important to make that distinction between a study text and what is prayed and what is studied in a more formal way within the tradition. But what's unique about this text is not only is it translated well in English, it's a new translation that took 9 years in working together among the editors and translators and scholars to produce, but there's also a tremendous amount of commentary. I can show you, perhaps you can see in here, I can show you up close. There's great resources, great explication and exegesis that helps people, especially those who are not trained in Islam, those who are not Muslim like myself, a Roman Catholic priest, a Franciscan friar, to understand better what's at the core of the Islamic faith. There are excellent like myself, a Roman Catholic priest, a Franciscan friar, to understand better what's at the core of the Islamic faith. There are excellent, but also I would encourage you to read the text itself. But also I would encourage you to read the text itself. St. Francis of Assisi and so many others, and those who bother to study the text itself, to try to understand the richness and the peace, the justice, the depth, the metaphysics, the world view, the understanding of God, their own respect for the faiths of Judaism and Christianity, what they call the religions of the book. All these things are, deeper and richer and fuller than the violence and the discrimination that exists in our world would lead us to believe. So I encourage you, I'll put the link below to where you can find more information about this particular translation and its commentary. And I encourage you to take a look, to read with openness and seriousness, rooted, of course, in your own faith tradition, but to explore what our sisters and brothers in the religious tradition of Islam believe, and to appreciate the richness and beauty of their sacred text as well. May the Lord give you